The conversation for today is basically document scanning and ChatGPT within OASIS. So a little bit of a housekeeping here as far as the agenda for today. Pretty much straightforward. This is actually kind of a cool presentation I'm going to go through. So I'm just going to walk through what you can do with it real quick and then talk about how it works, basically how to set it up and all the details here. So one of those things, instead of showing you a little bit each time, I'm just going to roll through a real fast little flashy thing and hopefully it'll go. And then describe how it works. Pat document scanning versus ChatGPT document scanning. There's actually a couple of different things going on here. I think everyone needs to be aware of because there's some pros and cons, and we can help you with a little bit more what's going on versus when we're talking about our scanners versus how ChatGPT does its stuff, which is really cool to talk about. And then ChatGPT quote prompts. Anybody who's dealt with any of the large language models, there's a whole concept called prompting, and I'll get into what we can do right now. And there's a lot more scheduled out for this. It's just the first little run on this. And then the rollout schedule. Some of this we're already getting phone calls from folks, and I've been showing it to folks for a while as well. But really just trying to get everybody a little more information about basically when it's available for you. All right, let's do some cool stuff right out the gate. So let me see if I can get to my Oasis real quick. So might as well do it the old-fashioned way. Just show you the details. So go into projects, and then I have a nice little thing over here. And just for argument's sake, we're going to talk about yeah, that's a nice bill of material. My handwriting really sucks. All right, let's try this anyway. So let's just pull it in Oasis to see what happens. Okay, if you get this new little pop-up, you have the update that does all the cool stuff. And I'm just going to say do it this time. So that obviously is a scan or a picture or something like that from just some junk I wrote down. And it basically is going over to the servers and saying, hey, will you actually go through and process that into a bill of material for me to pull in? So unfortunately, it takes a minute on this one. And inside of Oasis, you can continue to do other stuff. It'll pop up here in a second and say, hey, I'm done. It's time to do the next thing. But we'll go and wait here for a second because it really isn't terrible on there. But what's interesting on this, I wrote down at the bottom of that thing, by the way, and it always blows my mind because it seems to actually do things a little bit different each time. And that's what's kind of fun. So I put bill of material in here, project engine remodel. So that's our offices here. And it's kind of getting better each time. It actually did a pretty cool job on it too. So it pulled the project name there, which is kind of cool. The quantities and the fixture types. Looks like my 8C, I didn't scribble it out good enough. So I went and pulled in the 8. So I was kind of curious what to do there. But anyway, that's my bill of material. Sorry, I didn't pick actual catalog numbers because sometimes I get in trouble for doing that. So let's import it into a project. We still want you. And by the way, a lot of this works very similar to the O2O files if you've used those with between distributors or between manufacturers and reps and distributors, all that. Works kind of the same way. But we still want you to look at it because this is AI and it does pretty good sometimes. You saw today. I said Fagin one time, and it did some weird stuff down here a couple of days ago when I was playing with this. But we still want you to make sure that it's doing the right thing because we're the human beings, hopefully driving the machines, not the other way around. And I do want to create a quote out of it. Now, every time we interact with one of these models, whether it's one of ours or one of the manufacturers, there is this mapping tool that comes into here. Now, it's a little better about being quiet now with this release, so you can just hit cancel and roll through it. But we really want you to kind of map it as possible. That, if it's coming in from a distributor or a rep or whatever the case is, if you're a distributor, I just want you to hit cancel on that. And in this case, it's one to map the manufacturer. And notice it says light TM, so or light whatever it is add in there. But really, what we want you to do is if this has an actual factory name, go ahead and key it in here because the system will start learning from it. This is, as I talked about a time or two back, this is part of the group learning concept that's built into Oasis. And if one person does it at the company, it'll remember how it maps from this source to you. But for today, I'm just going to say cancel, which is valid, and it won't ask me again for that one brand. Same thing here for the emergency as I wrote in as the brand name on that, and I'll just hit cancel on that too and downlight. So anyway, it won't ask you for every single line, but it will ask you for every single manufacturer that doesn't know how to map. And hoping to add in one more deal where it kind of pulls in. Now, or goes a little faster. Now, Another thing that happens, a lot of folks don't really think about too much, is when we pull in something like this, we actually drop into the alt manufacturer and alt part basically what was coming in on the spec, and there'll be some other column names here, but the main thing is we pull in whatever came in originally, and then we're going to try translating or crossing this here in a second over into other items. So let's go and do that real quick. We have this made up factory over here, and it's kind of fun watching ChatGPT because it'll make up stuff just as much as you will, but it also does a lot of really cool stuff. So let me just do it real quick, and I'll do ChatGPT up here. I'm going to do a little crossover and it's going to talk to ChatGPT. And again, it's trying to say, hey, it's a human. And what I've found on this is if I'm putting in real factories and real manufacturers, it really does a good job. I've been kind of impressed with it. In this case, I've made up some stuff. So in contrast, or basically, ChatGPT is going to make some stuff up, and it's always kind of fun seeing what it pulls through here. But the other thing that's real neat when it actually does have a real catalog number is it explains why. So it'll actually break down different elements on this, kind of like, this time it come up with, Cree and Columbia and Corelight and all these other items out here. But if I had a real catalog number, it actually will go through and tell me that it's 3,500 Kelvin. It has all these other details in there. It really understands the catalog number or tries to break it down. It does a good job. In this case, I basically have kind of family names or just generic stuff in here. So it gets into this weird mode where it literally makes some stuff up. But play with it and you'll find out real quick. So the other thing we do when we're integrating with this is I want to basically go through and make sure that it exists. So I'm going to click into this. It popped on the wrong screen here. And it will actually pull into here, and now we can take a look. It looks like some Cree ZR, some other stuff in there. There's several different things in here, but it's actually trying to give you more information about that product through Folio and other sources in there. So it isn't inside of Oasis where we're just giving you the result. We're actually giving you more information there. So you can click into it, say, okay, yeah, that's the right one, or basically fine tune your approach on it. But if you do see one you like, just go ahead and click into use and it pulls it in. So now I have Cree and pulls it over here. And I can go through and do the rest of these the same way. It's pretty cool. All right. Same type of stuff. It's an exit. I can click into the exits or whatever and just simply say use and pull it in. Now I could go through all that, but I want to show one other neat little item in here, and then we're going to talk about how this works. But in the notes, this is another area that I actually love because I'm kind of a sometimes when I write the things the first time, they kind of come out like this, you have a bad day and say, Bob, you a royal pain. Anyway, kind of coming in hot on this thing because I've had to do this kind of late at night. So I'm sure, actually, I've seen some of this when I'm working with some of you that some comments can kind of get a little not quite professional. But one thing that is nice about ChatGPT, and this is another area where it really shines, is the ability to take the intent that you have and can change the tone of it. So what I'm going to do is go up to ChatGPT, and we'll go through the rest of these here in a minute. And I'm going to rewrite my quote notes here. uh, Rewrite quote notes. Looks like I may have messed up on that one. Oh, hang on. I forgot a detail over here. There we go. There we go. I was playing with something before we got on here. So anyway, you'll get these kind of funny little things in here, by the way, as it's basically rewriting doing whatever work you've asked for. In this case, rewriting some notes here. Anyway, I came in kind of hot and it basically rewrote it in a slightly different ways. Like we have collaborated close to manufacturer security, competitive pricing, and some other stuff. And the freight charge will be additional, and we strive. Basically, this is just rewriting it for tone and really just as a nice thing that I'll use even sending out emails. So More on that in a second. So anyway, you click use, pull it back in here. Sometimes ChatGPTs like say, hey, do you want to, get a little more specific in there? And you could actually write a little more details on this if you chose to, and communicate with ChatGPT to change it up a little bit. So, all right. That was the big show and tell. Now for how it works. Uh, Let me just do a save real quick because we can come back to that. So that's the slick. Anyway, okay, that was fun. So basically, I did my PDF to a quote. In that case, it was a handwritten thing. I want to go a little extra on that one, just to have fun. Now we did a crossover. I didn't do the whole thing. I just did the first few items and showed how we could link out. And then an angry note to a professional note. And then it was kind of fun. So we did all this stuff. I didn't miss anything. All right. So how does all this work? How does all this work? So if you're using OASIS Online or OASIS Desktop, you have to communicate back to our servers over here. There's some things that we do to kind of create a prompt and other things to get it over to in this case, the large language model. And then when the results come back, sometimes we have to finesse them a little bit so they'll fit back into OASIS correctly. So we have to access through our servers there, but this is how it works. It basically goes through. And if anybody has played with ChatGPT directly, it works really slick. I've been using it for a year or so, I guess now, and watching customers doing basically what I just showed you with Oasis. The only difference is they're copying pasting between Oasis and ChatGPT. Well, guess what? We're just integrated the two together. So more details there. So that's basically how it works. It just kind of pulls it through. By the way, the folio data here, the reason why we're doing that, not only to show your product, but also to help us when we send the data over to the large language model. So there's a little bit of stuff we do inside the communication that we send over to ChatGPT, just so we can distinguish between two different factories that are very similar. So it has a tendency to kind of pull things together sometimes. And sometimes we want to split them out where they're actually very similarly or same named, and we're trying to make sure that it knows that it's a certain manufacturer name in one state versus another one. So trying not to give up names there, but there have been a few issues, let's put it that way. All right, so how do you get started with this if you want to play with it? So the first thing is you have to have OASIS Online. That's because of the servers. You have to get access to the servers, and then the servers do the work with ChatGPT. And in some cases, it just does the work on our servers. More on that in a second. You must configure the folio brands. So inside of OASIS, there is I guess I can come back to this in a minute. Yeah, it's fine. Right now it's in Smiddles. We're going to move this into a couple of places. But if you go to Folio and do the setup in here, it takes a second for it to pull all the factories down. But once it pulls that in, you can map your factories to the Folio factories. And again, that's really some of the magic that's going on here is how it translates data back and forth and how it communicates with ChatGPT to make sure that the data pulls in. So give it a second to do its thing here. It's always the longest part. We have too many factories in there is what's happening right now. So, but anyway, you have to say accept on this. I'm not real wild about the legal stuff, but there it is. But basically, these are the little tests. This is a test database, but here's all the factories that we have in here, and we map them to the various ones inside of Folio. And that again allows us to move data back and forth. That is one of the steps you have to do. So you have Oasis Online, you have the brands mapped. So if you still don't see the ChatGPT menus, so they'll appear in the top of the screen here in various places, you need to go to configuration and software. And then there's a ChatGPT menu at the top if you're on one of the betas. And you have to click configure. And if you show the prompt menus, those will be the ones that are on the quotes. And if you want to use ChatGPT for document scanning, click that. The rest of this, leave it blank. There's some other details that we have in here. And then eventually you're going to want to get your own key or in your own login to ChatGPT. We strongly recommend that because, well, they want you to. And that's part of what they're trying to do is get more and more people to use their service. And we just want to be part of that. So anyway, once you have your key, leave the model blank generically unless you're working with us, because as you go from one model to the next, as you may have heard on the news, it changes things a little bit, and then our servers have to change. So anyway, hit OK. And that's it. Once you have all that set up, you're ready to go. And I already gave you the note is you really need to get a paid for account from ChatGPT. They're pretty cheap actually. And then you just put in the key and off you go. Uh, and then I already talked about the model. Don't change that. All right. So what's happening? So the first thing that happened is the drag and drop on the document. So what we have going on here is if you pull in a document that has been created by a well-known source. So in the case of an OASIS document, I actually have one here somewhere, an example quote. So this one was generated by OASIS, and we have other vendors we're following out there, software vendors, that tend to produce things in a very consistent way. Reading a PDF document is not hard. We've been doing it for several decades now. And then being able to construct a bill of material off that really isn't that much work. And the result is a very fast conversion into a quote. So I'll just do this one real quick. It's my little test one anyway. So I'll go ahead and just say do it or send it over to the PAT servers to work it. And it'll detect the fact that it is an OASIS quote. And if you notice, that happened pretty quick. Our scanners tend to be, just on general here, first of all, they're deterministic is the term that they use if you want to read all that weird stuff. They're predictable. In other words, they're going to consistently do the same thing because of the technology that's involved. The conversion time is going to be bloody fast. And in a lot of cases, it's going to do a little bit better just on general than the AI can. It's not to say AI won't do better in some cases on those, but in general, it's more consistent and it on average will do a little bit better. But we're only going to do certain documents in that we're aware of. So like if one OASIS user sent another OASIS user a quote, that will probably take care of inside of the PAT services. And then when we get into something that's handwritten, though, now it becomes to be a little bit different, and we'll actually skip these processors and not even try them. By the way, it only works on original PDF. So if I take a picture of a OASIS quote and send it over, we won't be able to use our tools to do that. We're not going to really get into OCR too much and bite my tongue a little bit because we do a little bit of that. But in general, we want to leave that to the large language model because they have more data to make it work without getting the weeds there. All right, next little item there. By the way, I forgot to ask Brady. Any
Yes, it looks like we have a question from Mark asking about when ChatGPT option will be available for non-beta users.
Oh, so on I'll get in a little bit more later on this, but the next production update, you'll start seeing it. And I'll get a little more weeds on that. Any other questions out there?
I think that was it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get in the rollout here towards the end there. All right, so ChatGPT document scanning. So the other scenario that we have in there. So what I'm trying to do is contrast. It all has to do with the servers over here I was talking about. So you drop a document in, whether it's online or desktop, and it goes over the PAT server. If we detect it's something we want to scan because we think we're better at it, we're going to do it. And if we don't see that, or if it's hand drawn like my little example there, it's going to throw it all the way over to ChatGPT and come back with the result. It's assuming it can do it. I've tricked it a few times. It's not super hard to do. We'll get in the quote prompts here in a minute. All right, so ChatGPT is still not better than a human. So all this, I'm talking about here, some people are like a little worried. It's like, hey, it's gonna, take over the world or take my job. No, it's trying to save you some time so you don't have to do all this busy work or anything like that. It's still way better than you would expect out there, as it noted on the scenario I just had right there. It works well with the original PDF or image, okay, and handwritten. It's maybe what it showed you right there. It worked real good. And now there is one thing that I was going to show you today, and I decided I didn't want to get in the weeds on it too much. And that is when you pull in a PDF, you'll notice that it will have a new feature in here. Most of you have used O2O in the past or have been playing with the PDF translators haven't got the pop-up. This pop-up is new and will start rolling out actually in the 1st of September, I guess we're out there. But this crop PDF first, I'm going to skip that for today. There's a lot to it, but I'll do a little bit of a video on that, but it's really just all you really want to do is simply highlight the area you would like to actually pull into it. And what I'm trying to hint at there, without getting in the weeds, because I don't have a good example, actually, is what it boils down to, is if you have a drawing, that's come off from an architect or something like that, and they have stuff pasted all over the place in there, and right somewhere in the middle or off to the side or something like that on page 3 is the lighting schedule. Just highlight that thing using those tools, what that does, that focuses the AI on that part of the image, and it's not trying to decode a cut sheet that's pulled in or the controls quote that you sent them or whatever. It's all kinds of weird stuff on there in cases. But long story short is you want to zoom in on that. And I'll have a video specifically on how to crop because it's something you'll end up having to do with the more complex images that come back. But in general, just pop it over there and see if it works. All right. Any questions so far? Otherwise, we're going to go in another direction that I think is kind of cool.
I
All
think
right.
the question's clear.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right, so going through this, let me go and just do my today quotes here. Projects did not save it. Uh, my ad here. Oh, there it is. Okay. In addition to the prompt, let me back up. So crossovers are neat, but there's a lot of other things that ChatGPT can do that's pretty cool. So let me back up a step and since we did crossovers first and tell you what I've been seeing. And I want you to try this because it's really pretty amazing. They've pulled in everything on the internet. If it's on the internet, it's probably in their database that they use to train their model. So it can actually take and decode the catalog logic real well, and then it tells you what the catalog logic means on the source item. I mean, that's pretty stunning. And then it'll start selecting products, as you saw in there. You come up with, I don't know, 6 or 7 variations on my made-up 2x4 panel here, and from there, it'll start building the catalog logic based upon the quote that you have, or based upon what it found on the original item. And it's pretty slick. So I'll let you play with that. It works quite well. The only difference between what I'll call a crossover and a suggest alternate, as far as OASIS is concerned, is the alt manufacturer and alt part. That's usually where we want you to put in the specified manufacturer and the specified part, basically wherever you came from. Okay. So and then we're basically going to quote out of the manufacturer and the part columns over here. So, by the way, you can change this catalog if you don't like the old part item in there, just file preference to catalog. Still trying to do that on my machine here. But if I'd like, I can actually click on maybe Begelly here. So I have Begelly and I have this, I guess it was an exit that we had. And I can actually go through and suggest an alternate as well. So it's still doing the same logic. And while it's doing this, let me explain what's happening in both cases. The first thing that happens is it takes the manufacturer and the catalog, and then it also sends over to ChatGPT all of your brands that you have. So if you have a manufacturer you don't work with, in the case of a distributor, just don't put it in or don't map it, deactivate it. Or in the case of a rep, if you represent it and they're active and you did the mapping thing with Folio, then it will actually go over to ChatGPT and say, hey, here's one of the manufacturers I want you to potentially cross to or attempt to cross to. And that's the other reason why you identified. The reason why I had 6 or 7 different variations on there is it found what it thought were matches with those other brands. But it's not any brand on the planet. It's only the ones that you have in OASIS set up for this process to go. Basically follow the setup steps I showed earlier. So in this case, it did the same thing for this brand here is it came in and said, okay, I'm going to take this item here, and it sent over all my brands that I wanted that I have active in my system, and it's trying to do a cross. So the assumption here is I'm doing a substitute. I already represent this brand, or in the case of distributor, I'm selling this brand, but then all the others that it sent over, it found nobody could match them. I don't have a very good system in here, so I don't have an alternate, I guess, exit manufacturer or something like that in here. So maybe I need to pick one up. So if I had a good exit manufacturer, then I probably could pull this over and take a look at it. So again, you can click on that. You'll see the folio information in there, or click use and pull it over. So not much difference right there. Uh, I'll try another one. I'll skip that for right now. But anyway, that's really the only difference between crossover. Pulls out the alt manufacturer and alt part and says, hey, give me crossover to any of the brands I represent. Same thing for suggest alternate. It takes basically whatever my catalog number and my manufacturer is, send it over to ChatGPT and says, cross it over to anything I have in my database or represent in case of reps. All right, cool stuff. All right, now that's not the only thing we're doing with, or those are two of what we call prompts that we send over to ChatGPT. The other thing we can do is other things that are kind of neat, and I'm kind of excited on these, although it's a little different world. The first thing I can do is I have to put in a vertical market, and it's best if I put in a a size of the area. It's basically the square footage. There's some other stuff we can talk about later on that one. And then it has to know where the location is. So I'm going to say Cabot, Arkansas. Okay. So if I have a vertical market, a location, and state or province, if you're in Canada, province there, and you can spell that out. And then square footage is optional on this. What I can do now is I can go to ChatGPT and do a market analysis on this. Again, they've read most of the stuff that's on the internet, and you can do the same thing. You can go into, the Google searches or anything like that and pull in all the documents, but it's doing this for you. It's actually going through and assembling a lot of information, doing a classical red ocean market analysis on this. So anybody knows about red ocean, blue ocean, that's basically the type that we're requesting, or type analysis we're requesting ChatGPT to do. So it's saying, okay, it's commercial office. Cabot, I don't know why they did this. That's ChatGPT flipping out there. Cool. All right. Normally it does everything right. Anyway, it does commercial office and here are all the brands that I send over. And it does do that. It actually wants to evaluate the brands that you have told OASIS to present to ChatGPT, and not just everything out there. So all right. And it does the analysis on there, and it really goes through all the details here. So it's the first time I've seen it flip it backwards like that. That's weird. Uh, anyway, it's going through strengths of represented brands, weaknesses, key competitors, winning positioning strategies, and summary. And by the way, if it does seem like it's kind of slanted towards the reps on this, I am in a rep version, and we do actually prompt ChatGPT to say, "Hey, I'm a sales representative or a manufacturer sales representative." And if you have a distributor version, then it actually flips over and says, "I'm an electrical distributor." Working on a project or something like that. Anyway, it gets in the details there, and we can give you more information if you like. So that's real weird to just flip that. Sorry, that's kind of usually it's so good. So it's even ChatGPT lets me down on a demo. That's crazy. All right. So that's neat. Market analysis on that. Crossovers we've done. Suggest alternates we've done. Now, the next item on this is a SWOT analysis. Man, I hate doing this, but I got to pick one. So there I have a CRE item in there. I'm going to do a project strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on it. Click over to there, and it does the same thing. And again, it's just pulling all the data you would have access to publicly on the internet, and it's just bubbling it through its algorithms out there to produce your typical SWOT analysis on there. Again, you're the pros, so sometimes it makes some stuff up, and that's putting it mildly. I use it as a software developer sometimes. I use it as a business owner sometimes, and what comes back at me, I really want to take a look at, because especially on the technical side, I'll know more than ChatGPT will. But in a lot of cases, it'll point me in the right direction and really give me a good direction to go in that. So I wouldn't really turn this loose entirely with a newbie to do a cross or something like that. Or you're a brand new salesperson, you just had walk in off the street to do a SWOT analysis on there and send them out and go sell. But if you have somebody that you've trained up through your programs, your training program, and they're kind of moving along a little bit, this will speed them up and also gives them some ideas that may not have thought of before. So I'm kind of bullish on ChatGPT. It does quite well. I'm not going to say we're staying with ChatGPT all the time, because there's others out there doing some really cool stuff. but it works and it's pretty amazing as well. So still doing that. I'm gonna have to figure out why that's doing that. Anyways, doing strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then key focus areas on this. It's just kind of neat to see what it comes back up with. And again, you're the pros. You'll know whether this is more odd stuff or real stuff. But I found it, at least with the stuff I deal with and some of the people I've shown it to, this has been kind of interesting. Good results so far. So, all right. Do we have any questions so far? Man, everyone's quiet today. All right. And the last one, rewrite quote notes. I've already showed that real fast. The I'm that one I'm putting everywhere. I haven't had a chance to really have everyone stamp that through the orders and everywhere else in the system, but there's a lot of cases where I've used that personally with all kinds of stuff out there, and it sometimes I still have to rewrite it, but it works quite well. Okay, let me see what's next on the deal here. All right, rollout schedule. Question we had before. So OASIS Online is required to use this because that opens security tokens and everything to get back to our servers, and they actually do most of the work actually talking to ChatGPT. It's in beta now, so if any of the beta users on there, you can start firing it up. Just make sure you're on this week's updates, and then you can go start working with it. Oasis Desktop will be in the September release. The online version of that, we're still working through some details there. A lot of it has to do with we changed a bunch of stuff in the last minute, and now we have to get it in front of some folks to finish it out and bring it home. So I'm looking September, October at the latest. Crossing my fingers, might be some issues there, but it looks like October at the latest on that. All right, okay to use our chat GPT. In other words, if you go into configuration and you leave that key blank, eventually we're going to time you out and we'll simply say, sorry, you must get your own key. But we want you to get in there and start playing. You're using our account on that. Uh, I'm told they kind of build a little bit of a profile if you're using it, and you probably don't want to look like an IT company acting like a distributor or rep. You probably want to be an actual rep or distributor with your own account, and it starts understanding how you go. Uh, yeah, go ahead and get it down and get going. I didn't put a slide in here on this, but I did want to take a second and rewind just for a second on here because I spent a lot of time last time talking about who's using your data and who's getting your data on here. And I did want to go through this one last time with this. So as when you drag and drop a quote into Oasis, or not just a quote, but anything inside of Oasis, we're going to tell you right out the gate or give you the option. First of all, you could turn it off through the setup screen if you just simply don't want ChatGPT to pull in any of your quotes. But if I pull this over, notice I can actually it's not on this version. Sorry. But there is one other version on it that says don't use ChatGPT. He'll just basically turn it off. So it's not on the version I'm gonna have right now. So you can turn that off, which will be important if you have drawings of a military reservation or something like that. It just won't go to ChatGPT. If you're okay with that, just let it go. And then the other item I wanted to talk about is each one of these prompts, we actually do go through and kind of pull things down to where we're not sending like the name of the project. But obviously, anything in here, be careful on because that will have to go over to ChatGPT and be processed. Most of the time, I don't think it's a big issue, but it is something to train your staff on, especially if you're signing like an NDA or something like that with a big job. You might want to think about, hey, does that really make sense to go over to ChatGPT? So there we go. All right.
Hey Brian, on that topic, we have a question about the kind of models or levels of ChatGPT. Is there a recommended one for users to have or a recommended level of ChatGPT that would work best?
Our recommendation for now is to leave that blank and then we will control it. Now, having said that, we're leaving that open where the user could make that selection. We just don't know what the result will be. So let me state it another way. Each one of these models responds a little differently. You may have heard that in the news, and it is true. Every time they change the way it responds, then we have to change our software to properly land the data in the right spot. So we'd kind of like you to leave that part blank, and I'll show you where that's at real quick. Now, having said that, you could play with it. I'm not against that at all, but that's a little model over there. Um, right now, we're using 4.1, and it seems to be quite good. I've heard issues with tone when it comes to the 5.0. What I've noticed is if you have it rewrite some of your documents in here, we tell it to use a professional tone, but it's not stiff. In other words, it still reads quite nicely. And I've heard some issues with 5.0. I don't know if it's right or not. I haven't had a chance to play with that, to be quite honest. But anyway, if you leave this blank, we will select it for you based upon our testing. If you put something in there, the result could be whatever it is, and you're free to do that. So, good question. Anybody else? All right. And that was the question, sir. All right. Went through that as fast as I could. I thought I would have a few more questions on this. It is fun. It is actually quite useful, is what I find. Get in there and play with it. If you have any questions on it, ask the team here. We could do a little side conversation with you and show you how it might work with real data as opposed to what I had to do for this presentation. But there it is. It works. Don't be afraid of it, and just watch where your data is at. That's probably the biggest thing I've been talking about for several months now with everybody is just make sure that you don't put anything that's an issue if it were to get out in the real world. So outside that, you should be good to go. All right, that's all I had for today. Any other questions? Otherwise, I do appreciate it.